We continue because Accenture envisions innovation as a key pillar of cybersecurity strategy in the new digital world. Let's learn how they help their clients innovating in cybersecurity and how they use security in any innovations areas to ensure they move securely to a new digital and safe world. The title is Secure Innovation, Innovate Security, and we receive with a big applause now to Floris van den Dool of Accenture. Hi, Floris. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Hi. Welcome.
Thank you. I like to be welcomed on stage like that. Doesn't always happen. Thank you. And thank you for having us here. It's a great opportunity for us as Accenture to be part of this cyber challenge and to meet a lot of particularly young people. Too many men. We spoke about that, and I'll come back to that later, because I fully agree with your point. We need more females, and to me that's part of the innovation we're looking for. But I want to take it one step back from the discussion we just had, because yes, I'm very passionate about security. Yes, I love technology. Yes, I love to be able to penetrate or hack into my client's network and to help make the world safer like that. But we're not in security just because it's so cool. We should be in security to make the world a safer place. The world really needs us. I mean, there's a bigger story out there than just, security is cool, technology is cool. This is really about what can we do to make sure we can keep progressing and changing the world around us in a safe and secure way. And that's why we need to secure innovation, and to be able to do that, we actually, as security professionals, need to embrace innovation and use innovation ourselves to make the world more secure. So that's the two messages I will have. So let's first talk a little bit about innovation. What do I mean when I say innovation, and what is happening in the world around us? Remember this picture? Remember this guy? Poor Arnie in his movie Terminator, sometimes not knowing whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. Well, actually this was all a story about, and I forget when this movie was released, but it's a long time ago, a story about forming a colony on Mars, terraforming Mars. Well, there's a good guy or a bad guy out there at the moment who actually wants to send an expedition to Mars. So science fiction is actually becoming reality. We're being caught up by what's happening. The world around us is changing much faster than we thought in the science fiction days. And I may be too old, but I remember this. I used to watch this. Does anyone remember the Knight Rider? It's okay. So I'm not the oldest guy in the audience. I mean, we thought that was the coolest thing, to talk into your watch and say, "Kid, come and pick me up," and then your car would come around the corner. Well, it's happening today. We have self-driving cars, and I don't know, prediction is, particularly in the congested areas in the world, 5 to 10 years, there will be predominantly autonomous cars, because they can solve a lot of the problems around sustainability, traffic jams, etc., etc. So science fiction is becoming reality very, very fast. And the world around us is changing, and we've actually come a long way. It didn't just happen overnight. It started with the web and the internet, and they brought already a lot of change. In 2000s, or the 2000s, we got mobility, and the services became mobile. Today, we like to say we live in the era of living services. The services are all around us. The world is really changing very fast. And when I say living services, what do I really mean? I want to show a short clip. Accenture has acquired this company called Fjord. That's why you see that Fjord logo. And they are thinking a lot about how is technology changing and disrupting our lives. And I want to show a short video to actually show that. I hope it works. Can we roll the video? There we go. So that's what we mean when we say living services. The services are all around you. They actually change depending on what you do. They learn more about you, they learn more about your needs, they understand your preferences. I don't know who of you is using Google Now, for instance, but that's a good example of such a service that really gets to know you, that really changes your life. I don't know about you, but I live in a congested area. I live in just outside Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So in the morning, Google Now will tell me, oh, you have got a meeting at 9:30, it's in the Amsterdam office, there's terrible traffic jam, so you better leave at 7:30 rather than at 8 to get there on time. And by the way, you shouldn't take your normal route, you should take a different route. So the service knows me, knows where I typically travel, knows my calendar, and gives me that kind of information. And it changes on the spot. When I'm on the road, it will say, hey, there's been an accident, change the way you go. And they, more and more, are using wearables. They're getting really, really closer. So the internet, and that's why we call it living services, is really getting closer and closer. It's no longer somewhere on a computer. No, it's really getting close to you, and it impacts your daily life. I'd like that example at the end, probably because I spend a lot of time on aeroplanes, flying around. Wouldn't it be great if you're watching a movie on the flight and then you can actually continue watching that movie when you get home? It knows where you left off, and it can pick it up from there, and you can watch it. At the moment, with most services, that's not possible unless they start streaming Netflix on airplanes. Then I guess it would be possible. And how will these living services change our life? Well, a lot of easy decisions are going to be made by these computers. What time do I need to leave my home to get into the office on time? The services will tell me, well, if you leave now, you'll be there at that time. And if you go by train, you'll be there at that time. So, easy decisions. Long time, they learn more and more about what we do. And they may even say, hey, I see every day you do this. Maybe you want me to do that for you. There's a lot of data and analytics behind it. And they collect more and more information from sensors all over the world, cameras, weather, traffic information, etc., etc. And it becomes a connected environment. It's no longer just the financial services industry or the traffic industry. No, it brings together all that data. So I've used the word data a lot of time. I've used the word your personal life. Is it already setting off any alarm bells with anyone? I hope it does. We're in a room full of security professionals. I hope you're already starting to think, well, hang on. If the world around me is going to change like this, what about security? Hold on to that thought, because that's, of course, where we want to go. And it's not just stopping, and it's not just young people. At Accenture, we do a lot of surveys, and we survey the market about young people, older people, the digital generation. Are people actually getting online? And we see that 68% of young kids between 14 to 17 year old plan to buy a smartwatch in the next 5 years. But it's not only those young kids, also 40% of the people, the age group, let's say my age group, 24 to 54, already own a combination of a tablet, a laptop, a desktop, and a smartphone. If you look at the average home, the average person is using multiple screens already. 61% of people who are planning a new TV are planning to buy a smart TV. And 87% of people don't use one screen to look at, but use multiple screens. Well, you can read the statistics. So it's everywhere. And the consumers, the hyper-connected consumers, as we call them here on this slide, they basically are really consuming digital all the time, everywhere. I mean, just look around you, the use of mobile phones, but at the moment, it's really everywhere. And why is that? Because everything is becoming digitized. Information at our fingertips. We want to have the digital capability. And it's also because something we started calling liquid expectations. What do we mean with liquid expectations? I don't know who of you is an Uber user. I know it's legal in Spain, it's not legal everywhere in Europe. But in Uber, if you get in a taxi, you've told the driver where you want to go because that's the information you got when you called the driver in the first place. But when you get out, there's a big difference between getting out of a normal taxi and getting out of an Uber cab because you don't pay. You just get out, say thank you, see you, it was a great ride, because the payment is done automatically. That's a fantastic service. Now, what do we mean with liquid expectations? Because we get used to that service, we like that service, we expect the same thing the next time we go to the supermarket. Why can't the supermarket do something like that? That I can walk out without paying? Or why can't I do that when I go to a restaurant? That I basically order online, I go to the restaurant, I eat, and I just leave. And they have my details, and so that's what we mean with liquid expectations. We get used to a service that we really like, and we expect that service in all kinds of other parts of life. And that's why consumers are really driving this whole change, and why companies have to follow. So, if you look at innovation, if you look at how the world changing around it, it's a world of opportunity. Everything is changing, the digital competitive landscape is still building. The Ubers of this world are only just starting to come to fruition, and the playing field is wide open. It's a fantastic world. Nobody can stop us, or can they? So there's a famous saying by an old philosopher, Paul Virilio, who said, when we invented the ship, innovation, we also invented a shipwreck. Now, I think that should be every security professional's motto. If you invent a ship, you also invent a shipwreck. Now, I've been in security for close to 30 years. Always a bit hesitant to say that because it shows my age, but yes, I've been in security for just about 30 years. And traditionally in security, what do we do when somebody comes with a new idea? What happened when the first people started using mobile phones? What the security professionals said? No, don't do it. It's dangerous. What happened when we all wanted to go to the cloud? What did the security professionals do? They said, no, don't go to the cloud. It's dangerous. You don't know what's going to happen. Let's control our data. Security people, and I hope I'm not insulting anyone. I'm a security person myself, so I think I'm allowed to say it. Security people are known in the industry, in society, as the people who can only say no. We are the naysayers of the industry. We always say, no, that's risky, don't do it. Well, just imagine, think back 500 years, 600 years, or whatever, when we started inventing those big ships. Think you were the security officer of this big shipping company. You said, what, putting people on a ship, sailing across the ocean to the end of the world? No, that's dangerous, that's risky. I mean, think about all the things we wouldn't have today if we, security people, would have stopped the ship. We do not want to stop innovation because there are risks. Yes, people died when they got on a boat. Yes, there are shipwrecks all over the world. But does that mean we shouldn't go out sailing? Does that mean we should stop progress? No, the real job of a security professional is not to say no, it's to say, yes, this is great. Let me help you to understand the risks, and let me help you to make it secure. Let's invent boats that we can put on the boat that you can sail away or row away if there's a disaster. Let's invent life rafts. That's what security people need to do. We need to innovate ourselves as well. But at the moment, with all the innovation, and I asked you before, are there any alarm bells already ringing? With all the innovation that's already coming, the risks are very, very clear. So yes, we need tiger teams. Yes, we need to do all those things. Because just look at the numbers. The numbers are really staggering. Just in 2016, 2 billion personal records in the US. Globally was stolen, and in the US, out of 3 citizens had their personal health data stolen. Now, I don't know about you, but if there's one thing I really care about, is my personal health data. I don't want everyone to know that I'm overweight or something, or that my wife is pregnant, or, I mean, those are things that you want to keep private. And 1 out of 3 people in the US has that data stolen. That's terrible, and we need to do something about that. 80% of all cyber attacks are driven by organized crime rings. I mean, the world is completely different than it was 10 years ago. We're dealing with very serious attackers at the moment. They have lots of tools, they use innovation, they share information, they share data. So we're up against a really formidable enemy and adversary. There's all kinds of estimates, but the number of losses in cybersecurity, here it says 400 billion, other reports will give you another number, but they are staggering. The cybercrime numbers in the global economy is really staggering. It really has an impact. That's why security matters. It's going to stop people from embracing new change. That's something we need to be worried about. That's something we need to help change. I mean, that's more than the GDP of 160 countries together. And it's bigger than the entire illegal drug trade. So cybercrime is really becoming a crime problem #1. And it's not something the police or the FBI, et cetera, are going to solve. Definitely not on their own. We need to work collectively on that. The World Economic Forum thinks it's the 5th global risk. When I say 5th, you have to think about, well, how do they look at those risks? Well, it's right up there with the risk of terrorist attacks. So when you say ISIS, when you say, well, the terrible attacks we had in Madrid and other places in Europe, cybersecurity is right up there, and Málaga, yeah. It's, and the world keeps changing. By 2020, there's going to be the attack surface, all the places where people can attack us, basically the living services that I just spoke about, is going to be 50 times as big as it is at the moment. So if you think today is difficult, in 2020 it's going to be 50 times as difficult. So our traditional approach of, let's see if we can monitor and spot and find the attacker, let's see if we can prevent the attacker, it's just not working anymore. And if it's not working today, it's definitely not going to work in 2020 when the attack surface is 50 times as big. That's the problem we're dealing with. That's why security is such a hot topic. And that's why all of us should be really excited to be working in security. And consumers are getting more cautious. I don't know if you see it in your personal life, but again, we did a survey, and we see that 54% of consumers are getting really cautious. They don't want to give information on the internet anymore. They read newspapers, they read about those breaches, and they say, well, do I really want to give this information online? Can I trust this service? And the real question for business is becoming, how trustworthy are you? Can you create trust online, and how do you do that? And again, and I keep saying that, that's where we come in. Great opportunity for security professionals. Yeah, I just listed those companies that consumers, according to our survey, trust. I was surprised by this. #1, apparently, together, we trust the telco operators the most. And then secondly, we trust the banks. After all what they've done, the financial crisis, etc., but apparently we still trust them. And then #3, consumer electronic companies. Apple, Samsung. Apparently, those are the companies we still trust. Just for your information. So I think I've already given a lot of challenges. Hey, you're here for a big challenge, but what are the cybersecurity challenges companies are facing at the moment? And I've already given some examples. This is just a list of the complexity of today's cybersecurity environment for any organization. Companies, governments, the networks become so big, and we go to the cloud as well. So how can we monitor what's going on? How do we know who's entering our network? How do we protect content? Well, it sounds easy, But just think about companies, because those services are living and because we share information, the content that you have is actually no longer in your own hand. Because you share the content with your suppliers, you share it with your partners, content goes to the cloud, etc. You don't control your own content anymore. That's part of the whole change. That's part of the living services. Together, collectively, we work on content. How do you protect that? Digital identity, one of the cornerstones of security. This is where I put on a little bit of my professor hat. I lecture at university in Rotterdam as well, and I always tell my students, without identity, without authentication, there is no security. Because if you don't know what kind of access someone has, if you don't even know who someone is, how can you determine what kind of access they need? And identity has become one of the biggest problems in the whole living services arena. Because we want convenience as a consumer. I want to be sitting in an aeroplane, watching a movie, and then go home and finish the movie. That requires that my identity needs to travel from the airline company that was giving me the movie to my cable company that is giving me the movie that continues. So identities that travel across multiple channels. So my identity needs to come much closer to me. So you're talking about things like biometrics, etc., etc. So there's a big change happening at the moment around digital identity. And again, security professionals can play a big role. And at Accenture, we're helping a lot of companies to go digital, banks to go multi-channel, telcos to start streaming content, etc. But it's impossible to do that without identity. So that's where security comes in. So that means that any digital project we do at Accenture has security embedded into it, because we need to make sure we have at least identity, not to mention all the other things. So identity is crucial for security. Visibility of malicious activities. Can we even discover what is happening on our network? And I already gave some examples, and I'll show some details on one of the next slides as well. How do we know what's going on our network, even when it's not our network anymore? How do we know what's going on the network of our cloud provider? How do we know what's going on in my industry? And is it coming after me as well? So having that visibility is incredibly important. Managing device security. There was a question before about IoT. IoT is becoming fundamentally important in security. Because security is no longer just about the office environment. But what if I wanted to have an impact on the economy of a country? Or what if I wanted to impact an energy provider? Well, I can bring down the SAP system so they cannot send out any invoices. Yeah, that's a nuisance, but in the end, big deal. They send out the invoices a week later. But if I can attack the energy facility and stop them from actually producing energy, I could actually cripple the entire company, and I could cost them lots and lots of money. And because everything is becoming connected, those devices need to be secured. And you know what the big problem is with those IoT or IoT, Industrial Internet of Things devices? They're old. Many of them are still running Windows NT, and you're not allowed to touch them. Because the provider of those devices gives a warranty that he'll keep them running. But to keep them running all the time, you cannot patch them. So they're fraught with vulnerabilities. And they're out there. They're out there in their millions. So that's the next wave of security issues that we are seeing. And we security professionals need to be ready for that. We need to help those organizations to fix that environment. And then I haven't even mentioned the IoT environment that is rapidly starting to develop at people's houses and in the public environment with cameras online, etc., etc. So IoT is really becoming the next big thing in security. Data protection. I already spoke about content prevention. What we need to get much better at is protecting data regardless of where it lives. If I put a file on a USB drive, it should be encrypted automatically, so that if my USB drive gets stolen or lost, at least it's not easily available just to anyone. And if I put data in the cloud, it should also be encrypted. So we need to protect data very close to the data. In the end, security, as much as we always talk about vulnerabilities in operating systems and applications, in the end, security is about the data. Because that's what we want to get. That's where we get value. That's where you can actually steal money. That's where you can steal credentials and identity. It's about data. So let's focus on protecting the data and the data that really matters. And it's a big issue for organizations. Typically, they don't even know how much data they have or where their data is. And most, just another statistic, most of business-critical data is not in applications. 70% of business-critical data is what we call unstructured. What does that mean? It sits in email, it sits in Word documents, PowerPoint files. That's where a lot of critical data is. Is that secured by corporate security? Typically not, or not good enough. So securing data is a big problem. And then, of course, there's all these new regulations about privacy. There's this whole GDPR thing coming. Organizations are really struggling with that. We need to protect that as well. And then many organizations make the mistake saying, well, I've done GDPR, I'm compliant, I should be secure now. Well, I'm sorry, that's not the case. GDPR only goes about privacy-sensitive data. It's not about your financial data. It's not about your trade secrets as an organization. So there's much more than just these compliance things. And of course, I already mentioned, the criminals themselves are increasingly very sophisticated. We're not dealing with script kiddies anymore. We're dealing with organized crime, and they innovate, and they have technology that in many cases we are not even using ourselves. So we have to change our mindset in cybersecurity. Now, this is a complex picture with lots of data. To me, the most important part of this picture is actually showing that we need to understand better what is happening in our environment. I mean, let's be honest. As much as you guys in your challenge are probably going to try and prevent things from going wrong, prevention has failed. We cannot prevent things from going wrong. If there's one company I really admire from a technology point of view, it's Netflix. And there's many things I admire about what Netflix is doing on technology, but one thing in a philosophy I really like, and maybe some of you have heard about it, Netflix has this thing called Chaos Monkey. Nice term. What is Chaos Monkey? It's basically a project. It's a group of people in Netflix that have only one objective, and that is to bring down any machine in Netflix. Not just a test machine, no, the production machines. These guys have one successful success criterion. If they bring down a machine at Netflix, they have succeeded. Then we'll get a bonus or whatever. Now, I said that to one of my clients, a big telco, said, do you do those testing? They said, in our live environment, are you kidding? Our clients would notice. So, well, that's exactly the point. Have you, when you were watching Netflix, ever noticed that the servers went down? No, you haven't. Why not? Because everyone in Netflix knows my system is going to be attacked. My system will go down. I don't know if it's today or tomorrow, but it will go down. It will be taken offline by these chaos monkeys. So I better design for redundancy. I better make sure that if this server goes down, there's another server that can take over. Of course, my clients are not supposed to notice that. So it changes the perception of the designers at Netflix. They don't think, well, maybe something will go wrong. No, they know something will go wrong. They're not focusing on prevention. They're basically focusing on remediation. How can we fix it when something goes wrong? And that's a mindset that all of us need to have. And I'm not saying we shouldn't try and prevent anything. Of course we need prevention. Of course we need passwords. Of course we need firewalls. Of course, well, debate. Probably you need antivirus or something like that. So prevention is a good thing. But you need to live with the understanding that prevention will fail. If it failed at the NSA, if it failed at Sony, if it failed at, the list goes on, it will also fail at your organization. This is what I tell my clients. Are you really so arrogant that you think that you have things better than all these other companies that got hacked? No, they did everything sort of right. But prevention will fail. So the real trick is detection. How quickly can you find out that somebody is actually in your network, that somebody is actually getting to your data? And do you know what they want to do? So it's getting to know the attacker, understanding the threat. If you're a bank, they probably want to steal money. If you're an energy company, well, maybe they want to try and bring you down. If you're an insurance company, well, maybe they want to commit insurance fraud. So really understanding what are the attackers trying to do? So what kind of data would it be going for? So make a hypothesis. If I were attacking my company and I wanted to steal content, I wanted to steal the latest car design from Toyota, what would I do? How would I get in? So then you can actually start detecting those kind of patterns. Oh, I see somebody trying to access that machine and trying to get to that data. What can I do about that? Because that's the next question, of course. So it's great if you detect something, but then the next question is, what are you going to do about it? So remediation, response. Those are the things that really matter, and that's why you see a lot of companies investing in these days. And that's basically what this picture tries to say. We need to get early detection. Because I don't know if you're aware, and normally I ask for a show of hand, how long do you think it takes on average for a breach to be detected? The average is coming down, so that's the good news. But at the moment, it's still 7 months. 7 months before the average breach is detected. So companies go on for months without knowing that somebody's in their system. And that's the problem if you do incident remediation. So you get that call, we've been breached. And do you know what happened? And of course the answer is no, we don't know what happened. So you go in and you look, and you go back and you look at backups, but then you have backups maybe for 5 days ago. And yes, they were already in 5 days ago. Do you have backups for 7 months ago? Can you figure out what happened 7 months ago and what they were doing in your environment during that period? That's why that period needs to be reduced. We need to find them as soon as they enter our networks. And we need to anticipate what they're going to do. That's where we need innovation. That's where security should really focus. How can we innovate to find that out? And how can we innovate to release the people who need to do that? Because throwing more people at it is not going to solve the problem. Because there's so many things happening on your network. How many people do you need to monitor all of that? We're never going to solve it by just throwing more people at it. We need intelligence. We need data analytics. We need automation. And I'll talk a little bit about those things. So these are some advices we typically give to our clients, saying that, hey, you really need to rethink and reboot your cybersecurity approach. And I'm not going to go through all of them, because it's, well, all of them I can talk about for hours, but we don't want to do that. A couple of things that play to the questions that were asked earlier, by the way. The point in the bottom here, make security everyone's job. That's about, somebody asked a question about security awareness. That's about awareness. Everyone in the organization should realize security is not something IT does, or that the security department does, or that this external company does. No, security is important because it's my data. I care about it. I care about it if my data gets stolen, if the car I just designed ends up in the hand of the competition. So I need to take the right measures. But then it's our job as security professional to train those people. And to not say, you're not allowed to go to the cloud, or you're not allowed to use USB drives. No, they have a need for that. They need to go to the cloud to basically have always access to their data. They need that USB drive to share information. So we need to give them ways to do that in a secure way, by providing encryption for the USB drive, by providing a secure cloud service, etc., etc., and by training. But you're not there if you just train people, because the questions that was asked was about, okay, how aware are organizations? And the answer is, well, that's pretty appalling. I think the example was, I think it was you saying that the police officers in Germany were hit by a phishing attack, and many of them clicked. Well, so we work with companies where we do mock phishing attacks. So we will send out a phishing email, and if they click on it, they will go to a website and say, well, if this was a real phishing attack, you would have a problem. So now you get a little training video. And that's not all. What we do is then, a couple of months later, we do it again. And in many companies, you see the click rate going down from, I don't know, something like 60% in the first email to 40%. And then we got these, what we call serial clickers, people who keep clicking, and we drive it down. And in some organizations, the culture is okay to do some name and shaming, to basically say, hey, do you know who clicked on this email? The funny story about it, when we did that for the first time at this client, we were sitting in this in the area where security was sitting, and we hit send, and the email, the phishing campaign went out to, I don't know, 80,000 users around the world. 5 minutes later, one of the security guys walks in, and he walks to our room, and he stands like this. He said, I think I did something very, very stupid just now. Even the security guys click on those links. And by the way, that's the best way to learn. I mean, I can show you a video, I can give you a lecture about how you need to be secure. That moment, when you click on that link, when your heart skips a beat because you think, oh shoot, I just did something wrong. Did I just really fall for a phishing attack? I mean, that's the best learning experience you can have. Because you're probably not going to do that again, although we found people who keep doing it. So that's very important, that security awareness. But I want to focus on this one. Companies are always asking us, how should I spend my security money? Where should I invest? And traditionally, a lot of money goes in prevention. 5 years ago, companies would spend all their money in preventative technologies, passwords, firewalls, etc., etc., etc. Nowadays we say it should probably be 30, 30, 30, or 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 on prevention, 1/3 on detection, and 1/3 on remediation and response. So you got everything covered. But if you really want to do smart investment, you need to invest in innovation. Now that goes totally against, like I explained before, goes totally against traditional security thinking, because innovation is bad, change is bad from a security point of view. But we need to invest in techniques that can really help us to outmaneuver the bad guys. So what do I mean by that? Let me give you a couple of examples. But I do want to pause very briefly when I get to this point about innovation. Because I think there's one important element of innovation that we haven't addressed, and it's got nothing to do with technology. And it was mentioned here already. And I want to say it again, because I'm really, really passionate about it. We need more diversity in security. If you only get guys, and guys, we're all smart, we all love technology, and we can think out of the box, and we can think like a hacker, but we need the other part of humanity to also chip in. We need females to help us with this challenge. So it's our task, all of us, to basically make sure that we can find out why girls are not joining security. At Accenture, we've got a target. I've got about 1,000 people in Europe working for me, and our target is to get 30%, and I'm sorry, I didn't get to 60% yet, but of 1,000 people, that's going to be a challenge. I'd love to get there. I want to get to 30% females. At the moment, my biggest problem is I cannot find them. Look at this room. I mean, there's not enough. So we're doing a lot of investments in training, going to universities, going to high schools to start interesting females also in security. And I think that's something all of us need to get involved in, because that's really, really important that we do that. But of course, there's a lot of technology that we can use for innovation as well. Because what do we need in security? What did I just talk about? We need security professionals who understand the threats, but more importantly, who not only understand technology, but also understand the business. Sure, we can say, oh, you've got all these ports on a firewall are open. That's a risk. Sure, but why is it a risk? Is there a risk to my business? Is there business critical information that you can get to? So we need to translate those techie things that we understand to what does it mean for the business? Why should business actually spend money? What's the business risk? How much money would it cost if something would go wrong? So we need to make that translation, otherwise they're never going to invest. And as I said before, we need people who are willing to work crazy hours at times, sacrifice their weekends and free nights for the good cause. Well, like I said before, we cannot get enough of those people. So there's not enough of those people around, and actually throwing more people at the problem is not going to solve it. We also need an IT department that can actually respond to change very quickly if there is a threat. One of the big problems big corporates have. So yes, we know there's a vulnerability, and IT says, well, yeah, we put it in our incident response list, and we'll deal with it in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Well, that's not good enough. If it's really business critical, something needs to happen. So we need to get IT to be flexible. But IT says, well, no, I don't have time for that. This project needs to go live, and this is priority. This is a bigger priority, so don't bother me with that. That's a real problem at many organizations. And what we require is lots of money. Because we need more people, we probably need to pay them more to keep them interested, we need to pay overtime for them, we need more tools, we need more technology, etc., etc. That is just not going to work. That's not available. Because there's not enough people, and you can't, I'm afraid you cannot read most of the things on here, but basically that statistic there in green says 2 million. The expectation is we need 2 million security professionals by 2019. So hey, if you're looking for a job, security is the right field to be. So that's the good news. The bad news is they're not out there. There are no 2 million security professionals available in 2019. So we need to find another solution. We need to innovate and use technology to change it. Which means we need to start from the bottom. We need to automate. IT is not going to help us because they don't have time for us. They're busy. So we need to automate our response. What if you detect a threat and then automatically you can change the settings on your firewall? It's possible. See, one of the sponsors here, Palo Alto provides very good technology for that. If you embed it and combine that in your network infrastructure with your analytics capability, you detect a threat, automatically you can basically close some ports. Or you can reroute traffic to an environment where you can actually study what is happening there. So automate. Going up, artificial intelligence. Because we don't have enough people, so we need computers to actually learn what is normal on our network. What is normal traffic, what is abnormal traffic. Most security breaches actually detected because all of a sudden you see spike in network traffic. They got in and they start exfiltrating data. So just by looking at traffic data volumes, sometimes you can already spot a security breach. So we've developed technology that basically, after a couple of hours monitoring, detects these are normal patterns. It's normal for this IP address to talk to that IP address. The traffic volumes are normally this and that. And then all of a sudden you see spike, or all of a sudden you see this IP address starting to talk to an external IP address. Well, that may set off a red flag. So that means that a security analyst who's watching a screen doesn't have to look at all those entries in log files, but only gets flagged if there's a real threat, if there's something really funny happening. Because we don't have enough people, remember, so we need to focus the people that we do have to the real funny stuff. That's also why we need big data analytics going up one more. We need to correlate what we see on the network to what's happening in the real world. So we see network traffic going up on that IP address. Well, it happens that IP address is where our business-critical financial information sits. So maybe that's more important than if it's just some public data. So we need to correlate that data. So we need big data. So the stuff that maybe we are a little bit nervous about, the living services that collect a lot of big data about us, is actually what's going to help us in security. If we understand the world around us better, if we understand behavior of the people on the network better, if we understand the environment and the risks in that environment better, we can actually take much more measured controls and really understand, well, that's a risk, and that, yeah, well, something may be happening, but that's not a priority because it's not a risky area. Or that's actually normal, or I can correlate it to a marketing campaign that we just started. So yeah, of course the volume goes up. But then, of course, if you detect something, like I said, automation to say, okay, let's close these firewall ports, let's reroute traffic, let's keep the attackers busy to find out what they're doing, use honeypots and things like that, is using deception techniques. To basically start feeding them information that they think is important, but it's not. Or have a shadow environment, a mirror environment of your environment with fake information. Why would you want to do that? Because then you can get to know your attacker. And if you know them, you can probably predict what they're going to do and you can prepare better. So these are all innovations that we should embrace. And these are just some examples. I've just taken some random pictures and I'd love to go in detail on any of these. Problem is I can't because I don't have all that detailed knowledge about those tools. This is a picture from a company that we recently acquired called iDefense. And iDefense basically brings together threat intelligence and puts it in a graphical way. I mean, as security professionals, we're all used to look at log files and many data entries, but actually using big data analytics technology, putting graphical information on a screen, things that you can click on. So basically what you see here, you see that the bright green on top is a vulnerability, and then you can actually click on it and see, well, it's related to a malware family. And if you click on that malware family, it will say which systems were impacted by that malware family, and you can keep clicking and get much more information. So you can really find out what's happening in my network, and what should I do next? Where should I care about? So it's just a creative, innovative way of putting all that data, because there's a huge database behind this, in a very easily accessible way that you can just keep clicking through and find out more information easily at your fingertips. This is another graphical representation. That's one of the benefits of a large company like Accenture, where we don't only have security, but we also have people who do a lot of data analytics. We've got this whole big data practice. So we asked some guys from our big data practice, look at the security data. How would you deal with it? And they throw it in a database, they throw graphical information at it, and they come up with something like this. So what you see here, every dot is a node, is an IP address. And the ring in the middle is basically the perimeter of the organization we were dealing with here. So all the blue lines are just connections from one IP address to another, from a client to a server. That's all fine, that's above board. But then we see a lot of things going to the middle, which is the external world, to IP addresses that we don't know, potentially are fraudulent. So rather than seeing a lot of lines in a log file or on a screen or seeing a lot of alerts, for an analyst, you can just click on those blue things, on those red lines, and see, what is this? What IP address is this? Is this a known bad actor? Should I do something about it? So it focuses really your investigation. So that's another way of using innovation to get closer. This is a complex picture that I stole from Pivotal, one of our partners that we work with. And I use this picture for two reasons. I don't have time to really go through it, but basically you see a scheme with an attacker who basically gets to our critical assets here, and then we create some phantom critical assets, the deception. Let's feed them information that is not true, but also study what they're doing, and feed that information back here into our analytics platform and into what we call security orchestration. That's where that automation comes in. Let's reorchestrate my security. So I've now found out somebody's in my network, he's looking for those critical assets, I'll keep them busy in the shadow environment, and in the meantime, I feed information back to my firewalls, to my alert systems, etc., and block off the trajectory to my real critical assets, and give them free rein and keep them busy and basically waste their time. So yes, they're in, but they can't do any harm, and I can study them and really find out what they're doing. So more and more of these innovation and technologies are becoming available, and we need to use them. Because again, there's not enough of us to tackle everything manually. But there's more, there's so much more, which I cannot talk about at this point in time. Internet of Things, the question was already asked. What about the Internet of Things? We're doing a lot of work in the Internet of Things. all of our clients are in the Internet of Things. Energy clients, manufacturing clients. I'm from Amsterdam, so last Friday I was talking to the CIO of Heineken, one of my favorite companies, of course. 5 years ago, he would always say, Floris, we're a beer brewer. We're not a bank. I don't care about security. On Friday, he said to me, Floris, I'm really, really worried about my IoT environment. Because all of our factories are getting connected, and what if people break into that? So security is important for any company, and IoT is playing a big role there. So yes, we need to do a lot in that area, and Accenture is investing a lot. And I've got several people who are focusing purely on IoT, because we need to tackle that. It's probably problem number one for many organizations at the moment. Code scanning. The biggest thing that is still going wrong is we keep writing crappy code. And there's no way that you can keep educating developers, because they still keep taking shortcuts and doing things wrong. So again, let's automate it. What if you write code and every night you submit your code to the database to get compiled, etc., that it automatically is scanned not just for functionality, but also for crappy code. The tools are there, the technology is there, so at many of our clients we are basically implementing that as part of their DevOps, that automatically, as soon as you rewrite your code, it's automatically tested for security bugs. And it's not that hard, because if you look at the OWASP top 10, the same things have been in the top 10 for, 15 years or so. We still make the same mistakes. Well, let's not allow programmers, coders, to make those mistakes. Let's make automated monitoring that will tell them, hey, you're doing it again. I fixed it, by the way. You need to tell them, because you need to educate them. And then smart monitoring and virtualization, because I spoke about the Internet of Things, but in the industrial environment, like I said before, you cannot touch those devices. So let's put a virtual layer in front of them and monitor what's going on. So there's all kinds of innovation that we can apply there. With that, I'd like to wrap up. Yes, we live in a world of opportunity. I'm very bullish. I love technology. I love the way the world is changing. I love how technology is impacting my life. I fully embrace digital services and living services. And yes, I know there's security risks. But I think it's up to us. And again, that's why security is so important. Not just because it's cool, but we can actually help to make the world more secure. And basically allow the world to change and progress. So it's a great role that we have, it's a great job, and hopefully it doesn't mean we have to end up looking something like this, where we can just stay our normal self. So with that, I'd like to thank you. Don't know if there's time for questions. I'm happy to take any question.
Thank you very much, Floris van den Dool. Did I say correctly?
Sounds very good.
Yes, thank you. And do you have any questions? Floris was actually, oh, perfect. That's what I like, Floris, participation.
A question to the Netflix case you did. You told, is it an in-house company?
Yes.
It was.
Yes. Okay. And they've even gone further. So they started with what they call Chaos Monkey, and then they had Chaos Gorilla, that is not just taking down systems, but total data centers. And it's an internal business unit or team within a network, and they've automated part of that as well. It's fascinating.
This was the only job they had.
So that's our only job, yes. Well, you're interested.
Any more questions? Come on. Yes, please. Thank you.
Hi. Have you any advice for users who do not know anything about this to avoid the theft of the personal data?
So do I have advice for users who don't know anything about it? So my mother and my father, basically, people like that. How can they deal with their personal data? Well, it's a very difficult question, but a very good question, because I think that's one of the big problems of society these days. I mean, so yes, we are aware, and we still make mistakes, but if I look at my father, my mother, they have a computer, they're on Facebook, it's very difficult to explain to them, you should do this, you should do that. So, yes, I think all of us can participate. So I would basically say, I mean, I'm in the Netherlands, one of the founders of what we call the Safe Internet Foundation, providing training and awareness for people with some government sponsoring, because I think there's a role for the government, but I think there's a role for banks, there's a role for telcos, and there's a role for all of us. So if you want to give back to society and to the community, go to primary school and teach these kids, because let's start with those kids. Maybe my parents' generation is lost for that, but let's start with these little kids and train them. So I think all of us can play a role. So there's not like I've got 5 tips that will solve the problem, because I don't think it's that simple.
Thank you. Por cierto, ¿cómo te llamas?
Hello, what's your name? Danielle. Danielle, yes, because you told me your name before. That's great, because you've attended both conferences, you've asked 2 questions, and thank you very much for your input. And Danielle.
Both conferences, and he asked twice before and now, so he's like very paying attention.
Did he
to
get the
everything.
same answer? Or?
¿Cuántos años tienes, Daniel?
How old are you, Danielle? 21 años. 21.
Have to come strong. Any other questions, please? Very good.
Sí, hola, muy buena.
Hello, good afternoon. I'd like to ask you a question in line with what has just been asked by the previous guy, but at user level. What can we do, for example, in relation to IoT, the Internet of Things? How can we make sure that our own security is secure? How can we improve our own security? When you mean us, you mean professionals or users? No, I mean users. Amateur users or even professionals. In which way can we improve our own security?
Can improve the security of their stuff, of the Internet of Things. Like each one of them.
Well, I guess, and you mean when you say Internet of Things, it's the more consumer devices, not the industrial Internet of Things.
Yeah, like a consumer, a user
Exactly.
normal.
Well,
yeah.
step 1, I guess, as we all know, is change the bloody password. If there's a password on it, because I mean that thing that happened with the cameras was just standard password. So, but I think we, and again, users can help, but we together should force the producers of those devices to provide an instruction to say, this is a device, these are the risks, this is what you as a consumer should do to make it more secure. But again, in the end, if you've got a security camera and you install it, all you care about is, can I get access to it through the internet? And many people never think about security. And there's a lot they can do, but I think it's up to the producer, the manufacturer, to provide a list and say, hey, these are our recommendations to make it secure. And maybe telcos, and I've discussed this with telcos, and I know some of them are thinking about it, could offer a scanning service to say, we'll scan your environment for you and we'll notify you if there's something that's not secure. And we can help you to make it secure. The problem, of course, with telcos is, well, they are for profit. They want to make money. So who's going to pay for that? In the end, it's all about money. Who's going to pay for those things?
And who's going to pay for those things?
In the end, you and I are going to pay for those things. That's how it works.
Any more questions?
Hi there. You mentioned your desire for more gender diversity, which I think is fantastic. But you also mentioned that what you want are kind of people who will work overtime late, sometimes work on weekends, be on call, and so on. Do you think those are contradictory?
Yes, it is. And that's why I said that's what we need, but that's not what we want. So if you try to solve the problem with people, you need people who want to work crazy hours, etc. And that's why I said that's not going to work. Especially if you want females, not that they don't want to work, but then we got work-life balance to mix. So we need to make sure that we can find more clever ways to do it. And that's why we need innovation and technology. So that was my point. I wasn't trying to say, I want all of you to work crazy hours. That's basically where we are today. We have to work crazy hours, but we need to get smarter and use technology to do the crazy stuff for us so that we can, sure, you'll always get a call on the weekend saying, hey, we've been breached. I mean, there's no stopping that. That's always going to happen. But at least it should be technology that makes that call and not someone else who needs to sacrifice that weekend. So that was my point.
Any more questions? We have Floris here, so we have to ask him if you're interested in something else. No? Okay, so big applause for Floris van den Dool of Accenture. Thank you for the talk,
Thank
Innovation, Security, and Securing Innovation. Thank you, Floris.
Thank you.